is my pleasure to introduce Jalene Moss. And Jalene is president of GlobalMindED Young Professionals. Jalene, let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everyone for being here for this really important conversation, and I'd argue the most important conversation we'll have today. I'm Jalene Moss. I am the founder of my own company, Working Within, dedicated to helping leaders build their social enterprises and to also empower others and students of life, which is all of us, through workshops and speaking engagements. I'm here with you today because I'm president of GlobalMindED Young Professionals. As Carol mentioned, we are dedicated to building the leadership skills and power and experience of young folk who are transitioning from college to career or school or classroom to career. And I know exactly why firsthand students and young people need that type of support and opportunity outside of their jobs. I graduated myself in 2020 from WashU in St. Louis with a degree in finance, and thank you. Thank you. And that is because my dad was first gen and in the military and really enforced in me why it was so important to have an education. And here with us today, also in this room or elsewhere, are Rontavius, Rena, and Elsa, who are all graduates of the GlobalMindED First Gen program. So thank you for being here. So once the 2015 and subsequent GlobalMindED First Gen and diverse graduates entered the workforce, they wanted to give back to help others who were just starting college the way GlobalMindED had helped them on their college to career journey. And that's how the Young Professionals group started. And so we understood through GlobalMindED's programming that there was a need for these students, a need to have social space, professional development, and also opportunity to develop their leadership experience. And so those are our chief aims in the GlobalMindED Young Professionals group in Denver. So come to Colorado in June. And so with our young professionals, we have monthly social and professional development events. We have an exec board that provides opportunity to develop your leadership skills and also workshops. And we also provide the opportunity to connect with GlobalMindED's intergenerational network, which you're experiencing today, just the Atlanta version of that. And so it's my great honor to be with our panelists on stage and to also be kicking off First Gen to College Week, which is next week. And so our leader of this panel today is Michael Steele, and the panel is called Students Have Their Say. Michael Steele is an attorney with Thompson, Hine, LLP, which is a full-service business law firm with offices throughout the Midwest and East Coast, so big. His practice includes representing businesses in product liability and commercial disputes in federal and state courts throughout the entire country. And so welcome, Michael, Mahogany, Keandre, Angelique, and Jalene.
Thanks so much, and thanks everyone again for joining us for the afternoon panel for Students Have Their Say. Just a little bit more background on me briefly. Originally from Atlanta, went to UNC Chapel Hill for undergrad and Duke University School of Law before returning back to Atlanta, back home to start my legal career. And kind of in preparing for this panel and talking to these amazing student leaders, it had me reflecting kind of on my path. And as I think back to my college experience, certainly one of the most formative things, not only of that experience, but really of my life, was an opportunity that I had to work with a student organization that volunteered at a local juvenile prison outside of Chapel Hill. And in the 3 years that I spent working with young men of middle school and high school age that largely, for circumstances out of their control, found themselves incarcerated in this institution for one reason or another, it just became so clear to me how much untapped potential there is in this world. These young men were so incredibly insightful and intelligent, and just hearing their perspectives on the world really changed my entire perspective. So it's so energizing to be in a room today with the folks from GlobalMindED and the work that they do, and all these other great leaders from various industries, and all these folks just working to continue to unlock that untapped potential that's still out there. So just so honored and excited to be here. And I'm honored and excited to be joined by this great group of student leaders as they share their perspectives, their experiences, and their insights on how we can better serve student needs. So I will let them give a little bit more background on themselves, and we'll start with you, Jalene.
My name is Jalene Hudson. I'm a business major, going for the bachelor's in business, and then I eventually plan on getting my master's in psychology to be a psychologist. I plan on being an author, and I go to Georgia Highlands.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelique White. I go to Miami-Dade College, and I am working toward a degree in diagnostic medical sonography, which is a fancy way of saying ultrasound. It's a 2-year program. I am in the first semester still, so wish me luck. But that's not something that I ever thought I would really be pursuing. I initially moved from where I'm from, which is Nassau, Bahamas. I lived there till I was 17, and I moved from there to California to pursue entertainment, which is what I'd been doing all of my life. And then, like everyone, I think, who can relate to this, COVID hit and my life completely changed. The industry completely changed. And I needed to find something more stable for myself, which is when I found diagnostic medical sonography. And I've been doing it ever since, and I'm really interested in it. I'm excited to talk to you guys more tonight.
Good afternoon, all. I am Keandre Thomas. I'm a senior business administration major with a concentration in finance at the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. On campus, I am involved in the Caribbean Students Association, where I'm originally from St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as the Collegiate 100, as well as I'm a fall 21 initiate of the Alpha Phi chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I currently serve humbly as the Student Government Association undergraduate president. It is amazing to be here and amazing to engage in this conversation this afternoon.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Mahogany Labor, and first of all, I want to say thank you to Jalene and Michael, and also GlobalMindED and Omen for putting this amazing event today. But yeah, my name is Mahogany Labor, and I'm a 3rd year here at Tech, majored in chemical and biomolecular engineering. A little bit about myself: I'm actually from San Jose, Costa Rica, so I came to the States just for school purposes. And on campus, I'm pretty involved. I'm currently the programs chair for the National Society of Black Engineers. I'm also working with OMED, and I'm an EDGE leader there, where I mentor first-year students, as well as the WOKI, which is a Women of Color Initiative Ambassador, and we enhance women research and education. So, yes.
And so the first question I want to pose to the group is, as inclusive college students and leaders, how can colleges be more inclusive? And Jalene, we'll start with you.
All right. And to that, I would say, I think it really lies in representation. A lot of times I think we look back, and when you're in the moment, you really do feel like you're going through it alone. Like you feel like nobody understands what you're going through. And I think having representation, even more so having a community that has not only been through what you're going through, but understands how to tell you to get past your own challenges. So I think having that community and representation to allow you to get past whatever challenge you face, and having the comfort to know that's behind you, and that support that you will have in that moment will be the difference between actually making it to where you want to be and actually failing due to stress.
Angelique.
When I think about inclusivity, I think about race, I think about gender identity, I think about culture. But from personal experience, you know, my upbringing was so different than I think what I realized a lot of kids my age were experiencing in America growing up in the Bahamas, because we're the majority. Everyone there is of color. So I never felt the sense of prejudice in that way growing up, and that insecurity instilled in me. And the only experience I ever had with it was after moving to America. So I can't identify, you know, oddly enough, as a woman of color with a lot of that experience. But what I can identify with is sort of more of a silent killer, which is mental health issues. And I think that that speaks more broadly to people of all genders, people of all race, people of all cultures, background, you know, economic standing. And I struggled a lot with anxiety when the pandemic hit, and that's an understatement to paint the picture of how kind of hard and bad it was for me. And I think that schools can do an even better job of not unknowingly excluding kids that are dealing with, or students in general that are dealing with mental health issues. Thankfully, my school, Miami-Dade College, they do offer free therapy, 10 sessions per semester, which I use every one of every semester since I have kind of started to acknowledge that it's something that I need in my life. But I think a lot of students, you know, they're dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with depression, they're not aware of the resources that are available, which may be available, but just not sort of marketed enough to, they know what website to go to. They know, you know, that how many sessions they have for free, how to even, you know, get a hold of a counselor. That kind of stuff is sometimes is there. They just don't know that it's there. So I think that's one way that schools can be more inclusive in general.
So for me, I think I'm a big policy person. So I think policy is one of those things that you just have to keep looking over as time goes along to see whether or not, you know, students feel like they belong here. Going to HBCU, we are big on tradition. However, I think we also need to realize whether or not, you know, the rules and the regulations that we have right now is fitting the society. For instance, housing. One thing that is very common within HBCUs is having gender strict dormitories or rest halls. Maybe looking at whether or not, you know, this is making students feel like they have to conform to one or the other. What if they're non-binary? Just for one example, as well as creating spaces where students can just be themselves. I know when I came in to Clark Atlanta, I felt kind of alone because I came from the Caribbean. And yeah, there were a couple of Caribbean people, but I felt like people didn't understand, you know, my heritage, the way I did things. So just kind of creating those events, such as international expos, where I'm able to express my culture and people can understand, and I feel like I belong there because I'm not just the odd man out, but I feel like I'm a part of a family, even though we're all different. I'm a part of the larger scheme of things.
Great answers. For me, I would say colleges are going to be more inclusive when they start supporting and relaying resources to the students in the same way that they advocate for those student enrollment percentages by race, ethnicity, and gender. And I think it's great that you have the numbers and you're showing that you have a diverse pool of students, but how are you reaching out to those students to make sure that they're feeling comfortable while they're in school, right? And I love examples, and I feel here at Georgia Tech we have the Student Center, which was recently rebuilt, and there we have the BSO, which is the Black Student Organization. The Student Center is just a building where we have spaces for students to study, we have restaurants, etc. But the BSO is a space for African American and Black students to come together, do their homework, sit down, and just have a time to feel themselves. And I'm not saying the schools have to segregate every single ethnic and cultural background throughout the school, but they have to listen to the students and make sure that they're giving them those spaces where they feel comfortable, when they can work best because they're around the people that they feel the most comfortable with. And I feel like something that we need to understand is that when you get accepted into a school, you deserve to be in that school. I got accepted into Georgia Tech and I deserve to be at Georgia Tech. So while I'm here, I need to be comfortable. I need to know that I'm being listened to. And I know that the school is doing everything at their best to help me unleash my full potential. And how? So I feel just what Dr. Sabrina at Waters did right now, to give the space to the students. Just yesterday, we had one of our meetings in the National Society of Black Engineers, and the Dean of Academic Affairs came and talked to us about the difference in graduation rate for students by ethnicity. And you can definitely see how African American and Black students take the longest to graduate. So he literally said, what can I do? I have the money. What do you want me to do? The entire room raised their hands and all of them started talking. So that's how you make spaces more inclusive.
And so, Mahogany, I want to stick with you because you touched on kind of a number of things that go to this next question. You alluded to, it sounds like some of the challenges that some of the folks here at Georgia Tech are dealing with. And so the next question is just, in your experience on your campus, what are the greatest challenges and needs that you and students in general have at this time?
Well, my answer is kind of like in two sections, and it has a lot related to what Angelique talked about. Right now, the greatest challenge is mental health and having that state of a balanced life, right? I feel like we're in the most difficult stage of our life. Like, we are students, but we are trying to make a profile in society. We're trying to understand financial literacy. And on top of that, well, we have to pay rent. And on top of that, we have school, right? And it's stressful. And I don't think there's like a perfect recipe. Like even myself, I try to understand how I can balance my life between social life, academic life, professional life. And it's a work in progress, right? But that's why we have to have counselors in school that can relate to each of the students. Just now I was talking to a friend right here, and she was telling me how she went to a counseling, but there was no person that could actually relate to her story. We need to have those spaces in which we can open up, but we know that the person that we're talking to understands what we're actually going through. Um, and another way that I think that we can work with that is also giving the space to professors before lectures to just come and give a nice message, right? Before starting school or the lecture directly, just bring a positive message and kind of help the students direct from that stress that we go through every single day, and feel that we have opportunities to change the way we go throughout our day. And another thing that I want to mention, I was talking to my friend, and she had the opportunity to talk to some NASA scientists and that graduated from tech, and they were telling her that it was more stressful to be a Georgia Tech student than to work at NASA. So how is it possible that we're going through so many stress right now, when even when we graduate and we go to the workforce, we're not going to go through that amount of stress? So that's the challenge, and I know there's no perfect recipe, but it's a work in progress.
Keandre, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing on your campus?
For me, I would say mentorship. I think students really want to be amazing, but I know for me, for instance, my go-to mentor has always been my mom. You know, anytime I ever need a question, I call my mom. But being a finance major now and wanting to go out and fulfill a career in finance, is very hard to talk to a family of counselors. You know, so just having that person I can call and say, what should be my next steps be? What should I look out for? Because you already been here. I think mentorship is amazing, and the fact that I was able to go to the Global Minded conference in Colorado, and just the ability to network with people that have been in that field for years, and to learn from them, and to be offered scholarships and internships. Things like that are amazing, and I think that Global Minded and any other organization that focuses on mentorships for students is something that's really big and students really need, and we really appreciate when someone reaches out to us to be our mentor.
One thing that I think students struggle with a lot is sort of the bridging the gap between school career and post graduation career, because I think when we're in school, we don't realize how didactic it is. Like, we're very book heavy and a lot of times the way we're used to going about whatever we're studying does not translate to the actual workforce, because you aren't necessarily getting hands-on training when it comes to dealing with people interactions, more of those soft skills that some of the other panelists earlier were touching on. And I think that sometimes the transition out of school into real life workforce can be a little bit difficult, because we don't have that kind of resource and that kind of training. I'm here with the EDGE Scholarship Program, which actually stands for Empower Dreams, Gain Economic Mobility. And they give us, thankfully, a lot of tools when it comes to how to better ourselves when we're looking for a job, the job search process. What should our resumes look like? How do we conduct ourselves in interviews? What is the best way to stand out? How do you make an impression and leave a lasting impression when you're on the job? How do you work toward getting that promotion? And I think when we're in school, it's very skill heavy. We want to perfect our craft. We want to perfect our skill, but is that the only thing that leans toward your consideration as a candidate? And sometimes that's the difference that sets you apart. And I think a lot of people don't always come from backgrounds where they have that parent, that aunt, that uncle that is working or has a, sort of that more prestige to teach them and to pass along generationally. It can be implemented more in school for people who don't have that privilege.
I'll say it kind of echoes off Mahogany, which was time management and balance between the two. I think a lot of times we really get into a point where we're running towards success. You fear complacency. So you run as fast as you can. And I think at a certain point, you get to a point where you realize that the pace that you're attempting to go might not be sustainable. And you realize it is truly a marathon, that as you are trying to run, that you need to make sure that you try to keep your pace, that you are trying to make sure that your mental is just as good as you are progressing, because you won't be able to maintain whatever pace you are going for the long run. And for me personally, I'm constantly trying to check to see exactly how my mental health is, trying to see if I do need to take more rest, trying to see what that rest actually looks like. And that can be one of my biggest, I don't think this will ever go away, but it is constantly something I'm trying to gauge and see where I'm at and where I need to be.
And so we've talked about some of the challenges, you know, that folks are facing on your respective campuses, and some of you have alluded kind of high level to some programs that exist at your various schools. And so I want to focus in a little bit on solutions, and specifically pose to the group, what are some of the ways in which you all as student leaders can co-create with the leadership at your school some of the solutions to these challenges that we've talked about? And Mahogany, I'll start with you.
So I think we co-create solutions by reaching out to other young leaders that we have in our school, being communicative with each other, and reaching out to the leaders that are on top of us, right? We need to have that seat at the table with the people that are making the decisions, like how am I here today, right? Dr. Sabrina Waters, I have a nice relationship with her. I'm comfortable enough to come to her, talk about my day, and at the same time propose ways in which we can make the programs at OMIT better, right? We need to know that we are being listened to. And as I said, I love examples. And one example at school here at Georgia Tech, we were recently celebrating leadership, right? And there were banners set up around school that represented the leadership body. But there was one thing that was wrong about all of those banners. It was a majority of the student leaders, right? Where were all the underrepresented minority student leaders? So a couple of the leaders from the different student organizations, the underrepresented minority student organizations, came together and talked to the offices and said, why aren't we in those banners, right? The next thing we see, the banners are changed, and now we see a diverse pool of the student leaders that actually represent the leadership that we have at Georgia Tech. So that's how we co-create solutions. We come together as leaders, and then we make our voices, we raise our voices, and we go to those that are making the decisions.
So I think for me, being the undergraduate president of the Student Government Association, what I've began doing is, so traditionally we have big town halls where we just come and every student voices their opinions. But what I realized, even for me being a student from the Caribbean, was that a lot of the discussion topics weren't on, you know, things unique to me. And I felt very weird to bring those up in those spaces. So as president this year, what I've kind of changed is that we have like on-site town halls. So that means we're going into the res halls and we're having them just with a section of students, international students, and these different types of town halls. Then you're able to speak about things that are, you know, unique to you, challenges that you face, and you're in a room of people that support you because they understand exactly what you're talking about. So we began doing that, but then on the next end, after we hear those problems, is not just about relaying the message, but you have this problem, come with me. Let's go and talk to the VP of Student Affairs. Let's go talk to the VP of Operations to see how we can fix this problem. And it's not just me going to them, but it's them. So now I have, you know, created this bond between another student where I don't have to always be the mediator, but you know that, you know, you now know this student, you now know this VP, and you build a bond. And I think by doing that, you kind of connect that bridge between students and administration, where continuously when you have issues, you don't have to sit and wait until they're fixed, but you can just go straight ahead because that relationship is already there. So there's just a few things that I'm trying to do in my position.
When I think of leadership, I sort of see tiers, and I think a lot of examples that we've gotten, which are great examples, are sort of on the macro level of what leadership can look like. But I also think that there's a just as important sort of micro level within the smaller, minute community of your friend circle. And I think that's sort of where I shine and where my personality type naturally lends to. because that matters too. And we're all very different people with very different personality types. And I think that this is a great representation of inclusivity, because one person may go to a president, one person may go to a vice provost, and then somebody else may be able to just pick up their cell phone and shoot a text to one of their friends and be a leader in that way as well. I can think of one example where gets a little bit vulnerable, but I have a classmate who opened up to me recently about she was struggling with her mental health, with depression, and she actually shared that she was feeling suicidal, which I take very seriously. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't being a good leader or a good representative as her classmate, because I showed up to class with a face on. I was super composed every day in class. I was sitting front row of the seat every day because I wanted to hear my professor. I had my hand up for every question. And then I went home and I cried because I was stressed. And I opened up to people that, my roommates, but I wasn't sharing that with the community of my classroom. And so we were both sitting at our clinical site at lunch, and she told me this. And I just was like, well, not to, take away from her experience, but to add on to it, I wanted to relate with her. And I shared some of what I was going through. And I didn't expect it. But later on that day, I went home and I got a text from her about how grateful she was for that, because I didn't know it, but she was comparing herself to me every day. And I was a point of leadership in her life that was on such a small scale, but affected literally her life. And just sharing what I was going through and saying, hey, I'm not okay. I'm not as okay as I look, made her feel less alone, and spoke to me how important these tiers of leadership really are. And I think that that's a way I'm going to make sure I show up more for my community and my classroom.
All right, I'm gonna follow that. So my current goal with, I do really enjoy networking. So a part of that is being able to talk to some of the people in power, trying to get those opportunities. And whenever I do get those opportunities, make sure I take advantage of those. Most recently, I did have the opportunity to talk to the president and the regent. And personally, I didn't know what the regent was. I had never heard of that. And if you're like me, it's basically one of the president's boss. He's like one of 27 people. I appreciated when they told me that because I had no clue. But talking to him, that was actually my first opportunity to be representation for the school. They talked to me because I'm president of a group called Brother to Brother, minority group for minority men. And he looked at us. It was me, a softball player, and another lady who I'm not sure exactly what she does, but she's involved in everything. I see her everywhere. Can't escape her. But being in that group, it was a situation in which they actually came to us and they asked us, what is y'all's experience? What are y'all involved in? What do y'all enjoy? What do y'all think should change? That was my first time getting asked that by, the only thing I can compare to it is one of those surveys that I didn't really think did anything, that say strongly agree, maybe impartial or strongly disagree. I'd never had anything like that. And it was a great experience in order to be in front of that person. And me personally, I did try to take advantage of it. I'm now in contact with him. He told me to hit him up. I got to read a book first. I'm adding that to the list of things. And then I do plan on making that contact back, but it's just amazing to be able to have that opportunity to make sure I can actually talk to somebody of that stature, of that position. And I definitely plan on attempting to get more, connections like that as I go forward.
So we've talked about some of the challenges, whether it's, on an individual level, mental health, on a macro level, inclusivity. I want to turn to a little bit more forward-looking, a little more positive. So for each of you, what gives you the most hope right now for college students, for our nation, for the world? And Jalene, we'll stick with you.
All right. I love the fact that we can mold the world, and it's becoming more and more accessible, but we can mold the world into what we want it to be now. I think in the past, it's been more difficult, say, even most recently with COVID. We've adjusted to make it where people can work from home. And that's actually an option. We do school online. That's an option if you want to. I've heard people tell me they can't wake up for that 8 a.m. class. They can't wake up early. And I don't think in the past you would have as many opportunities to be successful if you actually wanted to live that way. So I really do appreciate how much access we do have to information, to lifestyles, to whatever you want to do. I love the way that the world is becoming more accessible and I guess more mindful of what everybody needs and to be happy.
What gives you the most hope right now for college students, for our nation?
I
and
think what
world?
gives me the most hope is just students. There's a lot of generations in this room, and I think it's hard to relate to what students are going through in 2022. There's a lot of people, my dad, my mom, when I was your age, I'm like, listen, you did not grow up in 2022, okay? I get it. There's a lot for me to learn from you, but the students of this generation are so hardcore. They're such beasts. No doesn't stop them. And that gives me hope. That inspires me. I see it every day. If the amount of rejection that students face, whether that's actually applying to a college or a college program or a scholarship program, and it's just constant no's. But they wake up, they hit it again, they're doing their research, they're applying, and if that doesn't work, they're creating opportunities. And that is something that inspires me. I aspire to be like that. I learn from my fellow classmates, and I think that the future leaders that are coming out of college today are some of the most strong people I've ever seen.
So my answer would be this, like the ability for us to sit up here and talk and actually be very direct and about what our problems are, what we would like to see change. Because of my position, I get to talk to students all day long and about their problems. And contrary to popular belief, these students aren't just complaining, they're complaining for reasons. They aren't just complaining, but they have solutions as well. And just the ability to pinpoint those problematic areas and to give solutions is what inspires me. Inspires me to know that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or whenever I have my kids, that the world that they will be coming into would be way better than the world that I have right now, and that just inspires me. And I can't wait to see the amazing things that everyone on this panel does, all the students in this room does, as well as just everyone that I come in contact with every day. So that inspires me.
I love the energy. Love it. I think, yes, I agree to everything that they said, and I'm gonna add the tech part because I'm the engineer. I think that what excites me the most is the change, the technology that's just being developed and that we have in our hands. And I love how companies are coming to colleges and just reaching out. And because I'm from tech, I have an example like here in Atlanta, we're in the home of the headquarters of so many companies. Have Delta, NCR, we have Microsoft, Google. Like I can keep going, and all of these companies are coming to the school just to reach out to us for us to be the next leaders of those companies and even the new ones that we're going to create. So that's what gives me hope. And these companies are in the States and can also be multinational. And just to know that we have the opportunity to be those future leaders and actually make the change that all of us are hoping to, climate change related, mental health related, and just change the structure in the way that those companies work as well. That's what gives me hope.
And so to close us out, at least as far as our scripted questions go, since this event is resolved to solve, and we've heard it throughout the day, what commitments will each of you make to lead inclusive access on your campus to get more students to personal, career, and financial success? And Jalene, we'll start with you.
I resolve to solve minority men's issues, both mental and academic. Part of being brother to brother president is making sure that I am accessible to everybody within my organization. I think a big part of that is making sure that if I don't know, I have people that I know support all of us. And that's part of the reason I'm so comfortable being a part of it. I've loved a lot of your answers because I am really big on mental health as well. So even outside of my group, I do want to make sure that everybody who's involved with me is comfortable to make have the conversations on mental health. I love conversations in general. A part of being the brother again, I get to choose some of the conversations that we have on a weekly basis that I think are very important for men to have as a whole. And I think making the bridge between brother to brothers weekly conversations and making that everybody's conversations, everybody's friend groups having these kinds of conversations would not only increase our awareness, but make it where everybody can understand each other. And that would be my goal going forward, not only within brother to brother, but the world.
I resolve to solve through vulnerability. I think that's something that I've learned a lot is letting myself in one, because that can sometimes be the hardest hurdle for me. But then once I do that, to be authentic, vulnerable, and open with the people around me about how I'm feeling and allowing myself to give myself grace, because I think as a leader, that is an example that is very important to set because it combats the rat race. It combats the overworking that can happen. It combats the unhealthy hustle when you say, I need to pause, and you show people around you as a leader that you're taking a pause and that has value. It gives people permission to continue to do that and put themselves first in the most healthy way possible. And I also resolve to solve by sharing resources. Like I said, I'm a part of the EDGE program, and at our orientation, he had, one student stand up, and the entire table that student was at got there was accepted into the program because of word of mouth, which is amazing because it gave all of those people full rides through their programs. And I think that just sometimes that one text of, hey, did you hear about this application? Go for it. That encouragement can make all the difference. I've seen it. And so I plan to continue to give back in that way.
I resolve to solve through building my network, the ability to connect people. So right back to mentorship or maybe mental health related, being able to connect this counselor when this student needs it right this instant, or being able to connect individuals who may be interested in finance or interested in engineering. I'm so glad that Global Minded has these type of conferences where I get to connect with other students who are very like-minded but very different in that same way, where I can use them to help others in ways that I couldn't do it personally. So that's I guess my biggest mission now, ensuring that I'm able to connect people with who could help them in that moment.
I resolve to solve by being an active listener, and I think it correlates to my first answer in the same way that I said that schools need to listen to their students and reach out to see what their need. I, as a leader, need to go into the different spaces that I lead and listen to the things that they're asking for, right? The things that a first year student through the EDGE program might need are completely different from the things that a woman in the Wilkie program might need. And I, as a leader, need to understand and be a good listener so I can provide the resources and I can provide solutions as well and shift my priorities so that each of these people in the different spaces that I'm leading know that they're being accounted for. And I also think that another way that I resolve to solve is by bringing people together, just like all of you said just now. We are networking. I know 3 amazing student leaders that I can do events, collaborate with through our schools. And I also think as an Afro-Latina, I've definitely seen how we tend to pocket ourselves into the different minority groups. And something that I would really love is just to see all of the minorities come together. Because like, as we've said a ton of times, together we're stronger, right? And I definitely want to see a generation who grows together and builds together.
So I think we've got a few minutes left, and so if there's anyone out there that has questions for our incredible student leaders, feel free, and I can hang you the mic.
if you are afraid to ask for help? The majority of the class raised their hand. I want to know from you as student leaders, what gave you all the courage to ask for the help that you need for mentorship and that sort of thing so that I can pass that information on to my students?
I can answer that. It didn't come from me, for sure. It was encouragement. I think that surrounding yourself by people that love you, genuinely you, is one of the best things you can do. I sometimes can't see how bad it is and how much I'm struggling. As much as I'm complaining, as much as I'm crying, as much as I'm stressed, I still feel like, no, I got this. I got this. And it's not until someone goes, you should talk to someone. You should ask that question. And I feel like I'm, it's sad to say, I feel like I'm given permission to need help. Do I then say, someone that I value, someone that I admire, saying that to me, maybe I should listen. And I think through that is how I've learned it's okay. And it's a gift that keeps giving. You can pass that on to the next person that you see that has that struggle to admit that they need help. I've dealt with that so much and I still do. And I have to constantly remind myself that it doesn't all come at once. And so I think the biggest key to that for me has been surrounding myself with people who I let in and can see me for me without the mask on.
I want to add to that because I completely agree. It's definitely encouragement. And I feel like as a professor, you need to let the students understand that they're not supposed to know everything. Because I feel like what has happened to me a lot is being a student that, yeah, I make the A's, whatever. I think that I'm supposed to know everything. And if I don't know how to solve this problem, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not smart enough. I'm not supposed to ask for somebody to help me because I'm the one that has the answer, right? And that's not good. Like we are a learning process. Like just as they were saying in the talk before, like even after you graduate, you're still learning. You're not gonna know everything. So as a professor, you have to come with that vulnerability of letting them know, like, hey, you're not supposed to know everything. And I understand that. And you have to be comfortable enough to come to me and ask me whatever you want. And also, well, I feel for me, family is something that has helped me a lot. And I know that that may be different for every single student. But just like having that awareness or letting them know, like, ask questions. And I feel like that's something that they repeat a lot here in tech. Ask for help, go for the resources. Because, like, you're not supposed to know everything.
I think if I just also add to that too, because that's so true. I think I needed to specifically hear that I wasn't a burden if I asked for help. I think I felt a lot of shame around needing someone to spend extra time on me and potentially taking away from the class. But when my professors say, if you have that question, it means everybody else has that question. I want you to ask that question. That helped me a lot because I would put that on myself.
And I'll add on to that part. The students are constantly going to read the body language of the teacher as well. So depending on how you react to other students' questions, if they look and they're like, "Ooh, that was kind of aggressive," or they see frustration, I promise they're not going. Nobody gonna ask any questions at that point. They gonna let you be. Your class gonna go nice and fast, exactly how you want it to be on course. Y'all not going over, you ain't gotta worry about it. But I think as for me personally, it did help that my own organization pushed me to they'll ask us that question, and it does enlighten you a little bit whenever they're somebody like teacher or maybe one of your mentors will ask you, why aren't you willing to ask that question? You're paying for this, like you put in a little bit of perspective. But as a student, I think a lot of times you go into the classroom, you're trying to understand, and if you don't have the capability of or if you're not immediately catching on, then sometimes it can be a struggle, and you allow yourself to go further than you. It would be a lot easier if you fixed it right there, but you allow yourself to go further, and the further you go, the less you want to ask that question, because at that point, I got to ask you to go back like a whole lesson. I got to ask you to teach something that I think everybody else in here knows. And I think at that point, you feel like too much of a burden. And I think it works a lot better whenever they feel very, very comfortable with you and the relationship that you build.
If I can add on as well, I completely agree. I think that also sometimes students just want to be seen. Sometimes they feel like they're struggling alone. So maybe if that's just send out an email when you see, just to let them know that they aren't just a number, just send out an email saying, hey, I see maybe you don't even need to say that you see that they're struggling, but hey, pass by my office. I have a few extra minutes. Just come and talk. And come, how are you doing in the class? How are you? And for me, that would just mean the world to me, because now I don't feel like I'm just alone. But now that someone sees me, someone sees that I need that extra help, and they're willing to give me that extra help. It is just invaluable.
I think we have time for one more quick question.
Thank you. So I appreciate, all of y'all giving y'all insights about everything as students. I'm currently a master's student at Emory University. I'm a former Clark graduate, Clark, Atlanta. Yeah. I played football there as well. And before I actually went to Clark, I was at a PWI up in Pittsburgh, and I actually chose to actually go to Clark and go to HBCU because that's what I wanted. But at first, being a football player is always about, how much money you can get, what scholarships are available, academic scholarship, athletic scholarship. So I chose the route of going to the PWI. But the question I want to ask y'all is, seeing this whole kind of transition to students actually choosing HBCUs over regular schools, or just Black students in general actually, trying to take their life more serious in a way of what they're going to do, bringing technology, bringing new things and new additions that are happening to the world. How do y'all feel like y'all can actually help students navigate that way? Being is so new, especially y'all going through y'all career as well, or just y'all life as students as well. How can y'all navigate students just to help them actually choose their career path, or help them in the future, or just in general, just actually have a clear mindset goal of what they want to accomplish?
I'll start. I think one of the most beneficial ways to do that is actually getting them environments like this, where you get to have conversations amongst a bunch of people who seem like they have it figured out a little bit. Although everybody's still figuring it out, I think hearing the perspective of other people that are currently facing those challenges makes it where you think about yours, and you might pick up on pieces that you want to add to your story eventually. And having those goals and challenges, then you make a little networking where I can talk to anyone here, give them my card, talk to them that way. And then it solidifies, and I think heightens the chance of you actually making it, because again, you do have a community, you do have somebody who actually can help you towards your goal.
I think something that you said was really strong. The fact that we are also figuring it out, and just being open about that, because I'm still learning. And one thing from going to events like this and speaking to professionals, sometimes the degree that they got is not the field that they're in right now. So just understanding that, if you have an interest in this right now, pursue it. Maybe that might not be what you have an interest in 5 years, but the fact that you are going and you're still doing stuff, you're still learning, you're still being active in the professional realm, it just goes to show that you can, you forever learning, you're forever discovering who you are. So
I can only speak from my experience. I never thought I would go to college. I am not a first generation college student either, but the career path that I was in didn't require that of me, and I was already in the field. So I just never thought it was something that would happen in my life. And one thing I'm really grateful for is that my parents didn't make me go to college. I think that there is a lot of value in figuring out what you want to do before you feel like you have to know what you want to do. And I feel like sometimes there's a lot of kids coming out of high school that feel this pressure of, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? What am I going to get my degree in? What is my long-term career going to be? And there's a lot of learning to be done outside of college as well. I'm glad that that was my path. So I think when there is this need for space and this need to figure out where you belong in the world, giving that space to someone coming out of high school to figure out what their path is probably the biggest gift you can give them. Because when you choose to go to college, there's a value that you put toward your classes, toward your grades, toward showing up on time, everything that you just don't get when it's forced. you don't get that experience otherwise. And I definitely wouldn't have if I was forced. So I think sometimes just time is probably the best answer for that.
And I hate to cut this short. This has been such an incredible conversation, but unfortunately we are at time. Please join me in thanking our incredible panelists for the conversation.